Well, welcome back. We continue our conversation with four-time cancer survivor Lauren Siegel. Lauren, we spoke a little bit about the background, the context, and I did say to you off air as well that it's very important that we understand the person, apart from the disease, so we can really get a grasp of the magnitude of the disruption that it causes in one's life. Tell me about the very first time you were diagnosed with cancer, when the penny drops, that, oh my goodness, they're talking about me here. What goes through your mind?
So the first time I was back in Yeovil as a 23-year-old, and I painted the picture a little bit about that society. And I have to say, my first diagnosis was very different from the others. I was young, I had a sense of invulnerability, and the world was much more dictated by the rhythms of my love life than it was by serious illness. Yeah. So at the time, I had just met the man I was to marry. I didn't know that then. I'd completely fallen in love with him. And my view of my cancer was, when can I get back to being in the world so that I could continue?
Terrible timing, cancer, I'll tell you that.
You just move on. So I think that the first diagnosis was absolutely dealt with without any actual acknowledgement of the meaning of cancer in one's life. I buried that very deeply. Luckily, my first cancer was treated by a large surgical incision on my leg. They removed it and I didn't need further treatment. So that sort of allowed me to repress it to a large degree.
You dissociate, You
dissociate.
Yeah.
Keep going. My friend drove me to the doctor. I didn't tell my parents much. I thought I'd take a sleeping pill and wake up on the other side kind of feeling.
Take two?
Take two was very different, because by then I was married to the person I was in love with. I had 2 children. I was 45 years old. I had a very established career. And I thought I had done my time with cancer. Yeah. I thought, I've had my turn. It's going to take a long time, if ever, for me to be in that position again. So I was very blindsided by the second diagnosis. And again, I thought I can deal with it very quickly because it was a stage 0 breast cancer. But I didn't realize that I was actually getting into a world, because of my previous diagnosis, where doctors were going to treat me as a very serious case. So instead of just having a lumpectomy and removing the breast lump, I actually ended up having a double mastectomy, preventatively, saying to myself, I never want cancer again. So it was a very traumatic procedure, but also short and sharp in comparison with what was to come.
Had you then dealt with it? Because the first time round, you hadn't really processed it, etc. Or it was one of those things that get on with it. We have children to feed, a life to live. Let's do this.
It was slightly more traumatic because I think that the notion of losing one's breast is a very difficult thing. So I had many fears at that moment, and I had to really, that's when I started writing, essentially. I didn't want to impose it on my children and my family, so I turned to writing my journal as a way of containing my fears. But at the end of it, it certainly was, now I'm done. Life is going to go on. I'm going to take life by the horns, and I'm going to live it to the fullest. I had a sense of triumph. I had a sense of coming out this alive. I was so grateful. So yes, that was...
And so when you then hear that again, you have to climb this mountain, what? I don't know. I don't even know how to ask the question, or what even to ask. What in the world do you do?
You disintegrate. I think that the third diagnosis really failed me. It was very, very unlucky. I had 1% of my breast tissue left. The chances of having a third cancer, breast cancer, was minimal. And also I had this lump growing that we thought was scar tissue. So in some senses we had watched the cancer grow. So by the time it was diagnosed, it was a 6.5 centimeter tumor, and that was very serious. And then I thought, now I'm really being asked, someone is asking me something of myself that I don't quite understand yet. And I set out on a journey to try and understand what this illness was telling me, what I was being asked in the world to do.
Did you have a sense of why me?
Often. very often. But in a way, what you have to do when you're in that situation is ask, why me? And be very angry and be very fearful, and then find a way to overcome those emotions. Because if you get stuck there, you can't fight the battle. And it is a very difficult journey when you are going through chemo and radiation and surgery. It's something of another order. And that's important to say, I think, for everyone. Cancer is not one illness, so the different diagnoses present very different challenges. And you know, everyone hears the word cancer and thinks it's a death sentence. Exactly. It's not. They're very different kinds of cancer and very different treatments, each of which have very different implications.
We've run out of time, you know, in our discussion, but I must ask you, you know, for whom have you written this book? I get a sneaking suspicion that, yes, it's for someone who's being affected by cancer in one way or another, but actually the message is universal.
The message is absolutely universal. I think my first audience was for people going through what I was going through, but I think it's a book for anyone who is put in a situation where they don't want to be in. And it's about how to draw on inner resources and inner strengths that you don't even know you have, to tackle the challenges that are laid in front of you.